When great leadership seems in such short supply, can an African experiment championed by the legendary Archbishop Desmond Tutu offer any hope?
It is believed that you are people who can make a difference.
We share the same dream, and those who will come after us will also share that dream.
25 remarkable people promise to dedicate their talents to transforming the continent. Over the course of 5 months, they'll undergo intensive coaching in South Africa and the UK and have to show the results of their leadership on the ground.
Don't give me the victim.
It's uniquely designed to provoke,
I can't stand anymore listening to all this.
test,
We don't have to be friends to work together.
Okay. Disgusting, yeah? And what else?
unite,
I find him very special. He's special.
and empower them.
We can influence which road our nations go.
Power to the people.
My mind's racing with all sorts of dangerous thoughts.
I feel so challenged and motivated to go and start changing the world.
But reaching for great heights will mean addressing taboos and facing their innermost conflicts.
I can do this. Is it okay for me to put my life on the line when I have the responsibility of these children?
For some, it's an experience that will alter their sense of direction in life. Among them, will we find Africa's leaders of tomorrow? These are Tutu's children. From across Africa, 25 top professionals have been chosen from more than 200 high-caliber nominees.
We want to build this network of young people who become the catalysts for change across Africa.
We need to stop feeling that the world owes us something. You know, if the world does owe us something, it's not going to pay it to us. It's not going to pay it back. So I think it makes sense for us to just write it off and move on. And so that's the kind of leadership we need. I strongly dislike indecision. I mean, it's a major bugbear of mine.
Because I think we want to build this succession plan, that there are leaders for tomorrow, that we can look forward to a future where there are going to be people who are educated, intelligent, just amazing people. And you're one of them, Dum. So yeah, looking at you, kid.
Between them, they share 32 postgraduate degrees, 8 top corporate jobs, 6 government positions, 7 businesses, and 6 charities.
You become a refugee, you don't know if you're going to live. People you know die, and you just think, okay, wow, I'm just lucky, actually, that I escaped. I'm really what I call like a Pan-Afropolitan, and I've lived in 11 different countries. I've just moved all my life. Life is short. I want to see Africa change in my lifetime. And I think for me, that's my drive. It's really to pay tribute to the big pre-colonial African kingdoms. It's not a drive to climb the ladder. It's the drive to change Africa. The most important thing for me is to fulfill my destiny. And I believe, for now, that my destiny is to try to make a difference in Africa.
For some, it's about purpose, while others are looking for unity.
I always defined myself as an African from Tunisia. The authoritarian regime we had did not look at Africa as the continent where we can expand and connect and with whom we can claim our roots. So here I am, I'm applying for the visa today, and I'm excited. This is gonna be the beginning of an adventure. I don't think African unity can come overnight, but I hope that in 10, 15 years, I would say, wow, the Tutu Fellowship accelerated this process.
Having accomplished this much as individuals, their challenge now is to share a vision for the continent. How hard can it be?
Mark van Ons still an adventurer at heart. Maybe it's the old explorer genes that come through in many of us white South Africans. I see myself as a servant. I use money that I have and money that other people have lent to me to support small businesses that do something special for the country. Tell me someone who would say no to this proposition. I hope people will just see me for the fact that in my heart I'm an African. I've got no other place to go. This is where I live. This is my home.
Some are joining the course as reluctant leaders.
I'm really an achiever more than someone who likes making big speeches. I'm passionate about reading. I'm passionate about children and the youth in general. For some reason, I have been always put in those leadership positions, if I can call it that way, without really asking for them. And being an introvert, this has really pushed me to take up all these challenges and try to do the best I can to achieve whatever promises I give to people. It's amazing what we are doing in our country today. When you have the interest of the people in your heart, you can change, you can do anything.
The first half of their leadership coaching centers on Africa's most stubborn problems and takes place here at a mountain retreat just outside Cape Town.
Our African Leadership Institute is a virtual one. We don't have any bricks and mortars. So when we look for places to hold our workshops, we try to find an environment in which people become absorbed in what they're doing. There's no outside influences. And Montfleur, where we're going to, is perfect for that.
Thank you.
They don't have a soccer channel. Only rugby. It's sad enough there's no TV in the room, but we can manage. But I mean,
Sneaking a peek at the agenda.
Checking in. Where are we going? Where's everybody?
We're there locked up as a community for just over a week. By the end of that week, everybody will know each other extremely well.
Hello. Thank you. This is well thought out.
Does it say any what time it starts?
6.
Oh, okay, I can work with that.
6, yeah.
I need to ask her for a username and password.
It was dark at that time.
Barely have they unpacked when an issue divisive the world over breaks the ice. Gender bias.
How does one co-create a world where both men and women want to see fairness and equity? We have a fantastic opportunity here to say, what is it that we need to do differently going forward in terms of the societies that we want to create, the business communities that we are trying to create.
Mentor to some of Africa's top women bankers, Professor Shirley Zinn encourages them to use their leadership positions to empower women. But not everyone's convinced.
At the risk of sounding like I'm being a troublemaker, but I'm not. What is the aspiration for equality? So if you had to ask 100% of women, what percentage do aspire to be in those positions in business, what would it be?
I'm a firm believer that true emancipation of any group cannot be achieved or led by liberal members of the oppressing group. And therefore, while men can actually support the emancipation of women, I genuinely believe that ultimately it has to be led by women, otherwise it's never going to be genuine.
I'm willing to take a step back in my career so she can have a successful career as well. The same way they do it, women do it more often than not for us.
When it comes to addressing Africa's gender inequality, one CEO has already gone the extra mile.
So actually what I've decided to do in the company I've founded now is I'm hiring only women, so I'm doing a whole women company. And yeah, I'm doing positive discrimination, because I want actually to test an environment where women don't have to think about their gender. They have the whole flexibility to manage their time. All my suppliers are women company and preferably small companies. So I'm doing a test. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm thinking at least we need to give them that chance and do that positive discrimination and see what's going to happen. So.
This is
My mom is very untraditional as a person, so I think I come also from a background which is not very traditional.
Based in a small office in Johannesburg, SWAADY's all-female company sells luxury African teas.
I'm excited to be working with all women because traditionally, coming from a finance background, I've always worked with men. And so I feel like women are very collaborative and creative.
We're not in a competition with men. It's really that women helping other women excel. We're in this together.
There's quite a reaction to SWAADY's bold company ethos.
We're killing off the fire, but you're damaging the computers with the water. Yeah? So I really think that she needs to bring the men on board. And also they say, okay, we know that men have been in leadership for a long, long time. So we cannot lose the fact that men have some experience. So if the women are going to rise to the challenge, they need to work with the men to learn from them how they've been doing it.
Whichever way one slices it, women have a really difficult time out there. And if there is someone who's actually prepared to actually go out and come up with a venture that basically tries to empower women, I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, it's a very good initiative. And I actually wish her all the success.
The passion around the discussion on women and gender. Boy, we didn't let her put a word after SWAADY started. That was fantastic.
As night falls on the first day, political analyst Buntu and deal broker Mema compare first impressions.
When you come in here, you begin to realize the possibilities.
Seeing what your peers have done motivates you to be even more active, to be even more solution-driven. But, once you go back to your day-to-day life, how do you make sure that you maintain that fire and that desire to do well?
So if you're heading on that route, I want to stop you. You're not entitled. Good leadership is not exclusive, it's inclusive, it's inviting. We don't believe leadership is hierarchical in its structure. We think that leaders are there first and foremostly to serve. It's hard to believe, but...
Retired South African businessmen Sean Lance and Peter Wilson founded the non-profit African Leadership Institute in 2003. Sean's career has spanned captain of professional sports teams and heading up 2 of the world's biggest pharmaceuticals. Peter's includes strategy planning for Shell and the United Nations. They run the annual Tutu Fellowship as volunteers, helped by others who see the need for a fresh generation of African leaders.
Let's push him up to the shortlist. Yeah. We're not looking for people who are excellent in their particular field only. We've got very strict criteria of what we want to get from the fellows, and it's around leadership capabilities. They've got the courage themselves to stand up against authority, to take the risks, to go out into new fields. And I think by doing that, we may be identifying a particular type of individual who becomes a Tutu Fellow.
It survives on funding from corporate sponsors, who in turn award a small number of places to top employees, and on the goodwill of speakers. But it's an experiment, with no guarantee of producing the desired results. Split into groups by the mentors, the young leaders have had 24 hours to brainstorm obstacles to African development. But finding consensus isn't easy.
At the end of the day, it stems down to the guides. It's an individual decision.
Analyzing the root causes of corruption, SWAADY's group are torn between blaming global forces, society, or the individual.
Although we've given all these examples, the one driver is your individual moral, so we have value system.
Yes. If you're saying that, if you're saying that, and probably that's the next step, if you're saying it's an individual value drivers, etc., for you to now put a framework in place to address that becomes too big a problem, because how do we address everybody's individual value system when they're being raised in a certain way and their experience is different?
I think we can't just whichever way you look at it, whatever model you draw, global competition will be the driver of corruption.
It's not a driver.
It's not a driver.
It doesn't drive you. It's not because you have resources that you're driven to be corrupt.
No.
Because you can use those resources.
It ties into what he's saying. No, I agree with you. Yes. The point is, if you've got resources without having the capacity to manage it.
If you're greedy, if I come and give you $1 billion, you've done nothing for it. You know that you're not entitled to it. Some people don't care for it. They wouldn't take it. But if you're greedy, you'll take it.
It's the scarcity of resources. If I have no money, if I can't feed my children tomorrow morning, and you offer me $1 billion to make to smooth your transaction, it's done. Come again?
It's an issue that touches a nerve.
I refuse not to be part of the solution, and I guess this is why I'm in Africa. But it's heartbreaking to see what can be done, and to see it elsewhere, and to see actually our own people going and enjoying their mansions and infrastructure in Europe and in the US, and then you coming back in their own country, you cannot even have a proper road. I mean, in Nigeria, you have Maybachs and Rolls-Royce, riding on potholes, and that makes me angry.
As we see over the week, people become closer. The discussion gets louder, but people still respect each other, and they become friends. Usually, many people become lifelong friends from this process.
Assigned to the group debating popular uprisings, Tunisian revolutionary ZIED finds himself somewhat the expert.
Who is in a position to kind of just sum it all up? Yes, I think.
I actually don't want to give my analysis till I hear you guys, because I'm really interested to know how the media reported this to you and what is for you the popular uprising that happens in North Africa. I was here carrying two signs, two big signs. One saying power to the people, and another one saying, yes, we can. As I looked at this building on that day, I really looked at the symbol of repression, People were watching us from the offices over there in total surprise. I think at 3 p.m. they decided to do a crackdown, and they started shooting tear gas. We tried to stand up for ourselves that day and face them and try to claim our rights, take back our rights that we should have had from day one. On that day, I feel that I joined the hundreds of thousands of people who fought repression before and paid the tribute. It was really a thrilling moment.
I'll actually dive into it straight away. They didn't think about the future, what happens after we start the uprising. They did not look at the what next.
I created the whole media organization just to monitor and understand more what is exactly happening. And I've been trying, and I'm one of those who kind of predicted that this is gonna spill over North Africa. And I think you're on track. I mean, although the comment of the kids not having a plan on what to do next is somehow difficult to absorb. Everyone has a revolutionary part in his heart. It's whether you feel it or you kind of not allow it to thrive. It is definitely an African phenomenon that maybe You don't perceive it as being part of the bubble you live in, but it is definitely within the continent and will affect you in one way or another.
But as discussion develops, it appears not all the leaders are as ready to feel their revolutionary spirit.
You cannot afford to ignore the power of the voice of the citizen. And clearly, the era of leaders for life is over.
The issue I have is we've all taken it from the perspective that it's right, when all else has failed, this is the only way to do it, but there must be another side of the coin where a popular uprising is a bad idea.
We certainly were not saying a popular uprising is a great idea. We weren't. And I think one of the points that we raised at the beginning, for instance, was that a lot of the young people who got involved wanted opportunities, were looking for jobs, you know, didn't have a space. And for many of them, it's not resolved a year later. I think for us, we were trying to point out that leadership can do things before it gets to a point where the public ends up rising up.
Institutions,
Nigerian executives Amy and LJ offer up some solutions to Africa's corruption problem.
The cost in Africa is 150 billion a year. That's 15% of the global cost of corruption. So Africa isn't the most, corrupt place in the world.
Someone actually designed a website that is called ipaidbribe.or.ke. Now, what this website is doing in Kenya basically is to report any case of bribe payment. If you've paid bribe to any official, to anybody, custom agent, police officer, just go there and put the information. So you see the one that has, I paid bribe. You see the one that has, I was asked to pay bribe. And you also see reports on good officials that did not collect bribe.
So how do you verify if this actually happened or not? Are you not then making people almost guilty before they're taken to a court of law and it's looked into?
We possibly are a lost generation. Let us teach our children that success is not about money. Success is about struggle.
20 years ago, most of the continent was struggling with civil wars, coup, etc. So we also have to see that we have a large portion of African society which has been brought up into an environment which was not conducive to actually positive moral values.
But Vincent, a Ugandan MP, has some sobering insights to share.
I want to ask you to brace yourselves as young leaders in the sense that corruption is becoming more and more sophisticated in our societies. The institutions that we're talking about, the people who are corrupt are actually the ones who set up the institutions.
We have to believe that it's actually possible to do business in Africa without corruption. And once we have that belief, we actually have the confidence to go and fight against it.
Yes, we know that. When it comes to picturing a future less stained by corruption, some of Africa's brightest minds are caught between resolve and defeat.
We can influence which road our nations go.
Power to the people. My mind's racing with all sorts of dangerous thoughts.
25 strangers are groomed to form a new moral task force for Africa. 2 days in, revelations are already breaking the ice.
I'm hiring only women.
I really think that she needs to bring the men on board.
You don't perceive it as being part of the bubble you live in.
But there are greater discoveries about themselves as leaders and about each other awaiting them in the days ahead.
It's interesting being a white person in South Africa today. I'd love to be able to say race didn't matter in this country, that color didn't matter, that we had achieved Martin Luther's dream, that people would be judged by the content of the character. But we're not there yet.
If being white can be complicated, being an ambitious white leader seems loaded with sensitivities.
I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts about the notion of woundedness. Is that something that's there? Is it gone? Have we got over that? uNkulunkulu phezulu beka phansi ukhanyeza umuntu uMarc umuntu.
To go to university. People don't know this. And I think that's the spirit.
Learning to listen. That's been a very liberating thing for me.
You have family. You must always avoid being paternalistic when you try and help out in those.
In 2010, Mark left his job as partner in a global management consultancy firm to invest in small businesses with both profit and social benefit.
Hey guys, how's it going? Most people thought I was mad. Nice to see you, man.
And what happens is, Mark, because these kids without desks, they're spread all over the floor trying to write on each other's backs, balancing their books on their lap, whatever. Their handwriting is atrocious, but also the teacher has to pick their way through the class to get to Jacob to go and give him one-to-one attention.
Okay, so now I'm a kid in a school.
So right there, my name is Mark van Olst, and I am the principal investor in community group projects.
That's too much.
No, just keep that. Okay. And do another sentence. And I am?
I'm not an obedient child. I'm going to write something else.
Okay.
How long did that take me?
A little too long. Let's see the pace that he's writing at, how it's changed already. And if I can just show you there. See the difference?
No, it's a big difference.
It's huge.
You don't solve inequality by bringing everyone down to the lowest level. You solve it by bringing everyone up to the highest possible level. And that's where I'm very excited about marrying the sorts of business knowledge that I've had the privilege of being able to develop with the opportunities that still sit in this country.
Mark knows that unless other Africans accept the legitimacy of a white leader, he's very likely to fail. His peers on the Tutu scheme, he hopes, may provide a clue.
I'm just going to be me. And, you know, partially for me, it's an opportunity to see how me goes down with a lot of other African leaders.
Good. Who reads? Who reads? Europe reads. Europe reads. America isn't reading. The Russians read. The Japanese read. The Indians read. We Africans.
A visit from the rector of one of South Africa's top universities. Professor Brian O'Connell wants the leaders to harness the power of education in transforming society. But when instead some begin to critique the general public, conversation gets rather more heated.
I'm trying to say to you, young, dynamic, very important young Africans, that we've got a major knowledge challenge on our continent.
My mind's racing with all sorts of dangerous thoughts at the moment based on what you... One part of me is saying, bugger this democracy thing. It can't work, right? With the voters like they are at the moment, right? It can't work because it perpetuates an irrational response to a situation that clearly needs to change. And I know in my heart that doesn't ring, it's not a term that sits comfortably.
We're not really ready for democracy, but it's not acceptable in the current global context to actually say that we're not ready for democracy. So what's happening is until we get benevolent dictators like in Rwanda, we're basically at the mercy of our governments. And in the meantime, we're just almost victim of democracy.
The risk of hoping for a benevolent dictator is much greater than the risk of democracy.
With memories of revolution still vivid, of young North Africans who'd risk everything for democratic rights, ZIED grows quietly agitated.
We actually don't have a democracy, right? Let's be blunt about it. We have the makings of a democratic process. We have all the trappings of it. But in the end of the day, to be able to have a bunch of easily swayed voters, right, that you call your followship, who can be swayed by being put on a bunch of buses and driven off to a rally and given a T-shirt, that's not a democratic process.
I think democracy in Africa is an impediment to African progress because we don't seem to understand it. Why? Because the kind of democracy that we're practicing did not emerge out of our conditions. It was a template, manufactured system of governance that was imposed on Africa. A democratically elected leader in Africa cannot sacrifice his political base to be able to deliver on a national program. So in other words, the understanding is that they have to keep giving freebies to the kind of world that you're talking about all the time, because that's how they understand delivery of service. I think we need to craft an African sort of democracy.
I'm about to jump off my seat. I can't stand anymore listening to all this. Seriously, democracy is not based on the president, it's based on the citizen. We are 1 billion Africans. Are we 1 billion citizens of Africa? And I'm shocked that you go back to the example of like a benevolent dictatorship. This is why we are where we are because of this kind of dictatorship. I can go back to the example of Rwanda. They can do it only to a certain extent. We did it in Tunisia for 20 years. We educated the population. What do you want? You want health? We have a life expectancy of 70-ish number of years. You need to have freedom so people can thrive and have ideas and exchange and do things so they can innovate and bring the new economy that will bring growth. We are young leaders. We're here to promote a new style of leadership, and that's what we agreed on. You can't go back and be in your 20s or 30s and say, what we need is another dictatorship. We cannot sign up for another 30 years of dictatorship.
I think we have also to... No, I just want to say one thing. We have to...
Hold it.
Okay. No, I was just going to say that it is not that all countries need benevolent dictatorship, but it's at a certain point of time, and you know, different African, each African country is different. So Tunisia might be ready for a full-fledged democracy, but if you're in Mali or Nigeria, maybe you need a benevolent dictator. Who's going to step down when the time is right?
SWAADY has her reasons for prioritizing stability over democracy.
When I was born, we lived in Liberia, and in the 80s there was a very violent coup. You become a refugee, you don't know if you're going to live, people you know die. I think it was one of the defining moments of my life. The violence, the fear, all your world is shattered overnight, and you just think, okay, wow, I'm just lucky actually that I escaped.
At the same time as population at green is increasing, at the same time as pollution is increasing, at the same time as industrial output has to increase to support the growing numbers of people, at that same time, the resources are declining. You're going to be leaders in that world. How do you do it? You're going to have to be the smartest humans who have ever lived on this planet. You. So there's a big story coming our way, not just the fact that we have the population problem, but we also have climate change at the same time. But the only security we have is our capacity to change.
De qui exactement? Je comprends pas. Comment est-ce qu'il a fait? Un petit soldat comme ça qui vient.
In a bid to inspire them with examples of Africa's most admired leaders, Tutu's children are on their way to prison. Robben Island Prison. 12 kilometers off the coast of Africa's southern tip, it's where Nelson Mandela was held for 18 of his 27 years as a prisoner of the apartheid government.
It's not only just about struggle leadership, it's about serving your people and being prepared to sacrifice yourself. So the Robben Island experience is a very important part of getting that message of servant leadership across.
It's a welcome break from the conference room. But for NDUMISO, having lost people close to him in the struggles, their journey back to that era is one he's been avoiding.
It is the first time I go there. Previous occasions, the ferry was cancelled, and I guess I also had, some personal reservations, emotional issues that I, perhaps needed some time to deal with. But at least I'm safe now because I'm going with a group of friends, and hopefully it's not going to be too emotional. I'm most passionate about justice and fairness. Profession-wise, I'm in business at the moment. I'm hoping that I will remain in the business environment for the rest of my life. However, my first love was always law and will always be law. In the early 90s, the country was going through a very, very difficult transition period. I guess the compulsion to serve my community and to fight for people's rights was very strong, and that was the reason I actually decided to go and study law. This is the Constitutional Court, the highest court of South Africa.
Built within the brick walls of the once feared Old Fort prison, it's now where justice rather than cruelty is dispensed, so for South Africans has become a powerful symbol of the country's rebirth.
Here we have our Bill of Rights. This is the culmination of the sacrifices that a lot of our people made. And it's supposed to be the foundation on which our society and the new society is to be built. This was signed by Nelson Mandela on Human Rights Day. And it would be nice to actually sit there on the bench one day and hopefully play a meaningful role in actually developing the jurisprudence of the country, and hopefully be one of those people that when generations look back 200 years from now, will say at least we had some good lawyers who were committed to the values of our Constitution and actually worked very hard to build that. So it would be nice to actually come and appear here one day. I actually dread to even imagine how things could have turned out if the previous apartheid government was not actually brought, or let me call it the formal oppression was actually not brought to an end when it was. And that is why I will always feel an eternal debt of gratitude. One can never even begin to repay that kind of debt, but the least one can do is to try and live up to the kind of ideals that those people gave their lives for.
Even if you get out, how do you get out of the island? That's the problem.
You can get out. Swim.
You swim from there?
Yeah, exactly. Waste your time.
It's not possible.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Long swim, long swim to freedom.
Let's bet. That's 3 flat checks.
Their guides around the prison island are former activists and inmates, now free to tell their stories.
When I first came here in this prison, right from the boat, escorted by WARDA, still in chains, we were taken straight to that office called reception office. From 1964 up to 1979, all prisoners in this prison were sleeping on the floor. Prisoners were sleeping on these types of mats. It was only in 1979 when the International Committee of the Red Cross provided all prisoners in this prison with beds.
And the stories of those who at great personal cost led the fight for civil liberties.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the set of Mr. Nelson Mandela.
Only one man was kept in that prison. The one opposite me. The man who started the revolution in this country, 1960. The man the old government feared very much, if not the most. His name, Robert Sobukwe. And they followed his call by the thousands in the town called Sharpeville. The police came out with their machine guns and they opened up fire on the crowd of thousands. And it was on that day when government realized people are now prepared to die for their freedom. Mr. Mandela worked in this quarry 13 long years. The limestone was used to build the roads on which we are traveling today. But ladies and gentlemen, what was very bad working in this quarry was a reflection of the brightness of the lime upon their eyes. And they were not allowed dark glasses. Many of them turned snowblind.
Now, it's actually quite hard to imagine, you know, coming out here every day, scorching heat of the sun, and this is the only place you have for shelter. I just wanted to get a feel of what it's like.
Mr. Mandela would tell his fellow inmates, let us not fight these young white guards, because they too are all victims of a vicious society. And Mr. Mandela would rather say, let us rather bring them down, bring them closer to our chest, and it worked. After 500 years of struggle in this country, the starting point of reconciliation, forgiveness, and do not take revenge.
Your commitment and your discipline has released me to stand before you today.
Over dinner back in Cape Town, the leaders dwell on the humbling legacy of Mandela's generation. And despite his earlier anxieties, NDUMISO is left with a sense of pride.
In a way, it takes me back, you know, and forces me to think about some of the people that I know who actually lost their lives. Some of them in something that they didn't really understand, and they were forced by circumstances to become involved in. So it becomes quite emotional because it takes one, back a couple of years to actually think about, what was happening then and how hopeless the situation seemed. And to be able to turn it around to what it is today is just amazing.
I went to a meeting.
Two of my grandfathers have been imprisoned there. In all of this,
the opulence that surrounds us, and the peace. We really tend to take it for granted, you know. And so when you go to such places as the Robben Island, it kind of taps you on your shoulders and say, hey, this is the price that we paid for all of this. And so make sure that you don't take us back.
Today was quite a pivotal moment. And, you know, it just sort of tells me that the road ahead requires a lot of sacrifice. It's just giving me another dimension of what it means. It just forgive and not take revenge. That's huge.
South African founders Sean and Peter are acutely aware of the dangers of passive societies. And for them, this is about more than inspiring a small elite. They've come to believe that leadership is a universal responsibility.
We should be asking ourselves, are we, that is you and I, failing in our roles as leaders? Because we always think leadership, somebody else will do it for us. No. For a good society to be destroyed, it takes no more than for the average citizen to become passive.
Next time,
what are you going to do?
The young leaders are forced to hear some uncomfortable home truths.
I think you probably have that natural ability to cross the line.
We don't have to be friends to work together.
That bluntness could be tempered.
You don't need to speak loudly to have authority, you've just got it.
They get acquainted with their celebrated patron.
Is that a compliment? Or he's giving me a nice kick?
And in a game designed to create unfair privilege, will power corrupt them?
If they do not, we will strike.
There's no room for negotiation.
Come on, Z. Actually, these guys are sharks.